Hey, it's Chris and Brian here today, and we're going to talk about how to share files between vendors and customers and that sort of thing. What we see a lot of times is clients who, run into issues with large files, zip attachments, things like that. So one of the things that we suggest to them is that they create a folder in their Microsoft OneDrive and name it something like, in this case, Chris is naming it file drop, right?
Yep.
And then you can use that rather than going back and forth with email. You can use that, as a conduit to share files. So, Chris, maybe you can just show people how easy it is to do that.
Yeah. So I just, on our OneDrive here with this, I created a folder. They're signed in. You can do this from the web portal on the web, but generally people like it. As long as you're signed into OneDrive on your desktop, it'll synchronize everything in OneDrive. Now you can create files, you can share files or folders. So I created something called File Drop. I'm just going to click share here. Now, depending on what version of Windows you're on, you might see a little blue cloud that iCloud icon, like you see in the desktop tray here, the system tray. So if you see that, or you just see this share button on Windows 11, you'd click that, it'd bring up the share menu. Now you could just send an email, put an email address in, send an email with a message and hit send. But in my experience, for some reason, like people who use Gmail, it's typically going to flag this as spam potentially, because it's not coming from your email. It's coming from like my SharePoint.net. You know what I mean? Some weird, it's just some functionality to SharePoint use or SharePoint OneDrive use to send email.
That's a good point. Very good point. Go
So
ahead. Sorry.
so I generally you click copy link. Now you can get granular with this as well. If we click settings, you can make it so it's only people in your organization here or people with existing access. You can also set, only view, can't download, can edit, have a date restriction, set a password. So there's some settings in here you can do. But for the sake of this demo here, I'm just going to copy the link.
Can you send me the link in our chat?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, actually, no, just do it in a incognito window. Sorry. My bad.
We're not requiring any, specific, they need to log in. You can have them so they have to log into an account, but so you'll see there's just this random zip here. I can just click upload, files. I can upload a folder.
Let me stop right there, Chris. So the people that are on the other end, what Chris did is took that link as if he was the person on the other end, the customer or the vendor, and put it into their browser, and it brings up a link to that folder, right? So you can see everything that's put into that folder. So now Chris just uploaded, you just click the upload button, and he uploaded an Amazon order into that folder.
Yeah, so I put the invoice. Now, when I go back to my computer here, when we go into file drop, you're going to see that order in there.
So the vendor or the customer on the other end, flip back to the customer view.
Yeah, they're just in the browser here.
They're just in the browser. So they can't use the OneDrive icon the way that Chris shared it out. They can't use that system. They have to actually view it in the web portal.
Yeah.
Everything is in the web portal for them, but they don't have to log into anything. Chris didn't log into anything. All it is a very unique link that brings them right to that folder.
Now, there's some other considerations here. Occasionally, you might have a vendor you do a lot of work with, right? Some kind of subcontractor helping you out or whatnot. In that case, we see some people also, standing up SharePoint sites. And then you can take a SharePoint site, sync it down to your desktop, but you'd need to manually specify that external access is allowed. But you could just have a folder, a couple SharePoint folders where you're going back and forth. There might be drawings, designs in there, CAD files, and they're using it as like a collaborative hub. And this bypasses spam filtering. You know what I mean? Because let's face it, email's not perfect. I know people do a lot, people live in email back and forth and they save thousands of emails, but it's not a really efficient system. People often use it too much as like a file server almost with full inbox folders and all this. Generally, you'd get around spam filtering. And, a lot of times we have clients say, well, why can't you just allow that email? Well, the problem is when there's it doesn't matter if you're just using Microsoft filtering or you have some third-party filter, like, I don't know, Proofpoint, Avanon, stuff like that. Now, with some of the ones we use, if someone, password protects a zip file, our filter can't scan that email. So it has no idea if there's malware in there. And, this is on anyone's tenant. You could probably find dozens of zip attachments with malware in it that aren't password protected that Microsoft catches. But when it's password protected, spam filter, third-party filters usually have a method for like, it'll send the user an email saying, hey, you got this password protected attachment. Before we can release it to you, please provide the password. And it will have like your IT or whoever does you'll have your company logo on the splash page. And it does that because it needs the password to scan the contents of the file. Sending sensitive documents just zipped up, there's better ways to send files, especially if the files are sensitive in nature.
Okay, so let's take a step back because you gave a lot of information there. Let's take a step back to the link. So one of the things I suggest, one of the things that we do is grab that link, that sharing link that you had again, Chris.
Yeah.
And put that in a notepad. One of the things that I suggest you do is you take this link and put it somewhere, and then you can copy and paste this as needed if you need to share something rather than this emailing back and forth and getting into this mess that Chris is talking about. So that's point number one. Point number two is you're going to start to get a lot of different files in there. And if you're using one universal file drop folder, right, like you might not want other vendors to see that information. Remember that.
Yeah.
So after you're done with these file drops, my recommendation is you delete the files out of there once you know the people have used it, right? And then you just maintain that on a regular basis. That's probably the easiest way to deal with these files going back and forth where, this is super simple to remember. Just copy and paste the link, delete your files when you're done with them, and you got a nice little system here that that way you're not sending large files or zip attachments or whatever through the system and dealing with everything that Chris is talking about.
But also, so the point you mentioned, what you can also do if you don't want to, maybe you're not going to remember, you can set it to expire. So like you'll still see it in your OneDrive, but they'll no longer access it after this set date. So say I do a month, April 28th. That way, that link's only valid for 29, 30 days. Now, there's other things that, whoever administers the administrator of the tenant has access to where they may not want you, they might require, like, you can only send it with people who log in. So like people have to log in with their own Microsoft account and, identify themselves to access the file. There's certain SharePoint OneDrive controls that can be granularly set that, so like the end user might not have access to some of these functions,
Which is
so
a whole nother video. We won't go down that road because that's a whole nother admin type of video. But just to keep it simple, if you don't do all this expiration and everything and you're diligent about cleaning out, this makes a nice little drop area for these files so that you're not using email in a place where it doesn't make sense to use email. Okay. All right, Chris, thank you. Thanks. We'll wrap it up
have a
there.
good one.
Thank you.